more and more of the markets are going to be regulated and regulated prudentially, and that is going to give clients more confidence that their assets are secure.
Hey folks, Flo here with Blockchain North, still at Futurist 2023, day number 2. I'm here with Lori Stein of McCarthy Tetrault. I'm going to let you introduce yourself in 30 seconds. What is your who, what, and why?
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Lori Stein. I'm a partner at McCarthy's and I'm the co-head of the Fintech Group. I have a capital markets background, so I'm really a securities lawyer, but over the past 5 or 6 years, my practice has really shifted focus into almost exclusively digital assets.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's probably quite needed. And we'll talk about the client work in a second, but you did a talk yesterday, which I unfortunately missed. And for those who are following us online, maybe you could give us the gist of it.
Sure, yeah, we had a panel where I was up there with another lawyer in the space, and then each of us had a client in the space, and we decided instead of doing the same old panel about regulation that we always do, we would tell some war stories about like what it was actually like to go through the process of getting regulatory approval. So my client was Sean Cumby, who was the former chief investment officer of 3iQ, which got approval for the very first public crypto Bitcoin fund in Canada. And that was the file that I sort of cut my teeth on Bitcoin in, and it was like a 3-year process to get that approval, but it definitely changed the industry in Canada. So we talked a lot about that, what the experience was like, the good, the bad, and the ugly with the regulator, and it was a lot of fun.
You talked about horror stories, I think. Can you maybe give us one short example?
Well, I think on that, we talked about how long it takes to get something done, and the problem is when you're working in an industry like crypto where the technology moves so quickly, by the time you get regulatory approval for something, there's a good chance that the technology that you've been now approved to offer is obsolete or has been, supplanted by something else. So as soon as you get the approval, you already need to get the next approval. And so, of course, it's pretty good for lawyers in the space because we're always busy, but I think for clients that want to get moving with their businesses and get to market quickly, dealing with that regulatory friction can be challenging.
So how can a law firm actually help accelerate that process?
Well, I think the value that we bring is that we have very strong relationships with the regulators across the country, because in Canada, securities and commodities are regulated by every province. And even though they work together, it's important to understand how the system works. And it's a very complex system, so I've been practicing in the area for over 20 years, and at this point I have a good idea of how it works, although they're changing the rules all the time, and sometimes I get surprised too. And the people that are really on the front lines having the conversations and making the decisions, not the final decisions, but the recommendations. So I think when a client is new and is just trying to get their first product approved, coming to a law firm that has that experience is very helpful because it can allow them to quickly get up to speed on what they need to do.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So what are some of the problems that clients come to a law firm like McCarthy for? Do you have maybe a quick list of examples?
Sure, well, I mean, the Fintech Group, we have an interdisciplinary practice. So most of our crypto asset clients are either market intermediaries, so they're trading platforms, they're custodians, or they're developers, they're building new technology, maybe it's infrastructure technology, maybe it's a video game, and they're all trying to figure out how to structure their businesses, how to raise capital, and then what licenses they need to operate and how to get those licenses. So we offer kind of a very interdisciplinary approach that allows clients to learn about all of those different things. And of course, clients have to prioritize what they want to do first. And so part of our role, I think, is to help them strategize about that. And then, of course, going along with all of those specific crypto things, being a business that's primarily online, they also need to think about all of the regular like Web 2 online stuff, like terms of service and privacy law and IP and domain names and trademarks. And so there really is so much that they could be doing that they could spend their whole budget on legal services. So a lot of it's trying to help them to strategize what they should be doing first and why.
Very, very clear. And more broadly, I think you guys also do international work. So I'm wondering, like, how do you gauge Canada's competitiveness from a regulatory point of view? And maybe if you could name another market that you would say is maybe even ahead of Canada.
Sure, I'm quite proud of what the Canadian regulators have managed to accomplish in terms of regulating the intermediaries, but our regime is quite rigid, and it is based on the idea that all of these intermediaries are really dealing in securities and offering a marketplace in securities. Other jurisdictions that are really regulating crypto as a separate asset class. Even though it took them a bit longer to get their regulatory regimes out there, now they are out there, or they're coming out, and they do seem to offer a bit more flexibility. One example, I have a great client that's based in Toronto. They're a Canadian success story. 2 Canadian entrepreneurs started this business, and they're called Ledin. They're an amazing lending platform, but they recently made the decision to, they got a license in Cayman. Cayman has a virtual asset service provider license regime. They have a global client base full of people that are using their services. They offer amazing services that are very compliant and risk averse. And they wanted to be in a jurisdiction that had a license that could really support their business. So that was disappointing to me, because it would have been great if that could have happened in Canada. But they're still here, and they're great clients and great people, and I think that they do continue to want to work in Canada and with our regulators when the opportunity arises.
Of course, and the talent pool that we have here, I'm sure, is probably one of the important advantages Canada has. And finally, we ask all of our interviewees for their surest predictions for crypto in the next 2 years. I feel like that's a realistic timeline. What are yours?
So I think that more and more of the markets are going to be regulated, and regulated prudentially, and that is going to give clients more confidence that their assets are secure, and I think it will allow more institutions to start participating in the space. Everybody's talking about an ETF getting approved in the US, and I do think certainly in the next 2 years, if not the next 6 months, that's going to happen. And I also think that in the US, where it's been very litigious, there are going to be some, I'm hoping, more victories for the industry, and all of the hard work that my peers in the US have been doing on the legal and regulatory front will be paying some dividends as the industry matures.
Great, thank you for those very clear predictions. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Nice to speak with you, Lori.
You too.